recorded for all of you that would like to reference it at a later date. That will be posted on the session page on the ACTrees website. This is a program of Alliance for Community Trees, the only national nonprofit dedicated to serving grassroots organizations and municipalities that plant and care for trees, where over 90% of Americans live, which is in cities and towns. Starting in June, these webcast sessions will continue to be free for ACTrees members only and cost $55 per participant who is not affiliated with an ACTrees member organization. So, if your organization is not yet a member, go ahead and visit actrees.org and click Join Now to become part of our alliance. Today's session is Mini Grants Big Impact. Small funding opportunities, or mini grants, can empower new and non-traditional stakeholders to take action for greener cities. Many grant programs enable community members to take initiative on neighborhood scale projects, building capacity among residents to provide sustainable, long term stewardship for trees and green spaces. These programs can greatly expand an urban greening organization's impact across a city or a region, but they also require attention, management, and lots of support. So we are excited to welcome our first presenter, who is Shalini Beath. She is Deputy Director of Million Trees NYC at New York City's Department of Parks and Recreation. She helps to manage citywide volunteer tree planting and care programs, liaises with various organizations and groups to expand the tree care program's reach, including, of course, managing the mini grant program to empower grassroots community groups to expand and sustain local tree care efforts in neighborhoods across the city. Prior to joining Million Trees NYC, Shalini worked as parks at the Department of Parks and Recreation's Urban Park Rangers Division as a grants manager. Shalini holds a master's degree in conservation biology from Columbia University and a bachelor's degree in biology from Binghamton University. And Shalini Shalini joins us now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah, and to Alliance for Community Trees for allowing me to present today. I'm really excited. With that, we can get started.
So just transferring keyboard and mouse, you should have those controls now.
Great, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As I said, I'm really thrilled to be here today and talk to you a little bit about our mini grants program at Million Trees NYC at the Parks Department. Just quickly looking at our agenda, we're going to chat briefly about what Million Trees NYC is, our TreeLC tree care program, and then we'll just launch into our mini grants program specifically. We'll talk a little bit about the application process, some of our resources that we offer, highlight a few key successful projects, and then talk about the lessons we've learned, and then we'll have time, of course, for some Q&A. Okay, so Million Trees NYC, our mission is to plant and care for 1 million new trees across our city's 5 boroughs by 2015. We were launched in 2007 as a public-private initiative with the New York City Parks Department and New York Restoration Project. And I'm so happy to announce that we've already planted more than 834,000 trees and counting. But of course, planting a tree is just the first step for our initiative. We really want to make sure and focus on the stewardship component. We want to make sure that the trees that we're planting in the ground survive and thrive over the long term. And we definitely want to include New Yorkers in that process. So because of that, we created a tree care program called TreeLC. And the goal of TreeLC is to create a network of leaders, really volunteers, who can organize tree care efforts so that, again, these new trees can grow up into healthy, mature trees and provide us with maximum benefits. And we really want to inspire a sense of ownership in our volunteers and, of course, provide them with whatever support they need in terms of resources such as mini grants or just free supplies and information. We can take a quick look at our stewardship engagement spectrum. So this is really our stewardship strategy. We want to make sure we engage New Yorkers who may not even know about the initiative, and then provide them with the tree care education programs such as beginner level TreeLC programs or more intermediate level care captain or train the trainer type programs. And then of course we really hope that all of these volunteers eventually feel empowered to take on more advanced level programming, such as our mini grants program, because again, we want them to feel like they are the leaders of tree care in their neighborhoods. So that brings me to our mini grants program. This is a relatively new program. We actually launched it in 2012 for the first time. And the goal is to empower committed community groups to organize and strengthen their grassroots tree care efforts. And the grants, the maximum amount of the grant is $1,000 per group. So let's take a quick look at the guidelines. This year, we're offering two kinds of projects that we can fund. One is street tree care projects. That simply means groups can come up with a plan to care for trees planted along streets in our city. We also have an option of reforestation projects, so they can plan to care for newly planted trees in our parks or more natural and forested areas. In the interest of time, I'm just going to talk about the street tree projects for now. If anyone has questions about reforestation, you can definitely email me later. So what are the requirements for street tree care? We ask that groups set up and adopt a tree account. I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. We ask them to care for at least 20 young street trees. We really want to focus on young street trees. And we ask that they host one tree care event at least and involve about 20 volunteers. And we also, in the guidelines on our website, they're much more detailed, but we also kind of suggest some high priority areas which have had historically low canopy cover, and therefore we've planted just lots and lots of trees in those areas. They're just areas of high concentrations of trees. So some project ideas. We really encourage our applicants to get creative with their grant applications. We really rely on them to come up with what project or what strategy might work best in their neighborhood. As long as it involves some component of tree care and involving community members, we really let them come up with creative strategies. And we, especially for first-time applicants, really encourage them to be very specific about what they want to achieve in terms of their project tasks. And we ask them to work as a team so that the whatever the project items are, it's more kind of divided up amongst the group, and it's not just one person doing all the work. And of course, to set attainable goals and have a realistic timeline and a budget is definitely key. Okay, so the process is pretty simple. We have an application form. It's actually going to go live as early as tomorrow, so we're keeping our fingers crossed. And really, there's three sections. We ask for some information about the group. We ask them to come up with a work plan, and then just brief description of what their tree care project is all about. And then lastly, we ask them to submit a project budget. So just a line by line itemized description of what they're going to actually buy with their $1,000. The timeline for the grant is, again, like I said, we post in April. The applications are due in mid-May. June is when we announce the grantees and have an orientation. And then June to November is when they get to implement their projects. And then in mid-December, they submit a final report. We really want to focus on reporting. This is really important to us. So we ask grantees to report on an ongoing basis during their grant period. So I'll talk a little bit about the post-tree care event report and adopt a tree in the next slide. And of course, like I said, the final report is really important as well. So we remind them to definitely keep track of all their accomplishments and any other photos or any other evidence that they've had a successful project. So the post-tree care event report is just a quick way for a grantee right after their tree care event to kind of think about how it went. We ask them, of course, to keep track of the numbers. We want to know how many volunteers showed up, how many trees they cared for, but we also want to know how the event went. We want to know what worked well, what they could do better, and definitely how we can continue to help them so that their event is more successful in the future. So the Adopt a Tree platform, if you haven't used it, definitely encourage you to take a look at it. It's part of our Million Trees NYC website, and it works kind of like Google Maps. The point of this is to really help volunteers and grantees included locate trees that are planted in their neighborhood. So they can put in their street address or intersection, and they can zoom in to their block and see where the street trees are, and they can click on them and choose to adopt them or pledge to care for them. And this is a really great way for groups, especially groups that involve students, to keep track of all of their great work because you can add activities, and then you can also go to the library section, which is a nice set of resources and tree care tips. We also offer a lot more free resources. We worked with the Department of Environmental Protection here to come up with a hydrant permit for our grantees, which allows them to access fire hydrants to water street trees, because this is really important, especially in the summer, to provide that water access. And we also have a lot of other online resources in terms of the handbooks. We provide free tools and much more. I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our successful projects. So we've had a lot of great projects, but I just highlighted a few. This one is the Rotary Club of Inwood in Manhattan. They're a really wonderful group and truly successful because they work together as a team involving really committed community members to come together and share their resources and their time towards a common goal of caring for street trees. So just as an example, the local carpenter helped them build tree guards. The local schools, after-school coordinators got together and got the kids out to help care for the tree beds every week, or paint the tree guards. They had citizen pruners come out and help them prune the trees, and the list goes on. So it's really about many community members coming together and sharing their skills. Similarly, we have the West Kensington Action Group in Brooklyn, also a great example of a community coming together and involving businesses and business owners in caring for their street trees. Getting involved in Virginia Avenue is a fantastic group in Parkchester in the Bronx. This group had parents and children and just their community members doing weekly street tree care and continue to do weekly street tree care. 150th Street Block Association in West Harlem incorporated tree care into their ongoing summer block festivals. So if they had a block party, they made tree care part of that. If they had an art fair or a summer camp with their youth, they involved tree care in part of that. So that's another big positive um, aspect of this group. They just kind of included tree care in all of their ongoing activities. And then lastly, there's Fourth on Fourth Avenue in Park Slope, Brooklyn. Also, just a great group. And you can see their tree guards here are much more simple, but they also created tree bed signs, did flower plantings, and really got their community members involved. Wanted to show you quickly our numbers. You can see even from 2012 to 2013, we made a huge impact and we improved our numbers significantly. And then lastly, just wanted to talk about the lessons we learned. We've only been running this program for 2 years now. This is going to be our third year, but we can see that our mini grants program has had such a big impact and has really helped increase our program capacity to build tree care over the long term. Um, and again, the most important piece is that we empower community group leaders to become creative and think about locally relevant solutions to tree care. They know best, again, what works in their community, and we allow them to the authority to make that happen. Um, and then even though this is a new program, we already see the 2012 grantees acting as mentors to some of our newer grantees, so that's definitely encouraging. With that said, we still have some challenges. Our newer grantees, we can see there's definitely varying levels of accountability and preparedness, and sometimes they have trouble setting just more realistic goals and learning to share that responsibility. So that involves, a lot of follow-up from our office. The reporting helps. Um, so those are all, just lessons learned for us to kind of be more and more involved, have site visits with grantees, so that at the end of the day, they accomplish their project goals. And that's it. At the end, if anyone has questions, definitely let me know. My email address is on there. And as I said, our grant application is going to open up tomorrow, so we can send around the link to that if anyone's interested.
Wonderful. Excellent, excellent, Johnny. Thank you so much for sharing. We're excited for you to kick off your third year of mini grants. Know it's going to be a great year, and it looks like you've made so many um, improvements to New York City's trees already. So can't wait to see where you go in this next year. So we will
Thank
open
you.
the floor for questions. We have one question starting us off. Um, Wanted to get a little bit more clarity around the 2012 grantees, what you just mentioned, becoming mentors to the
Mm-hmm.
newer grantees. How does that work? Do you put them in touch through email? Do you have them, on hands-on workshop? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We've actually, something that we try to do is host some networking events. So we have, we try to do it definitely in the winter season when it's a little more downtime, but we do it at least once or twice a year where we invite all of our tree stewards, whether it's someone who attended a basic tree care workshop, whether it's someone who's, more advanced care captain, whether it's someone who just kind of stopped by an information fair, and of course, all of our mini grantees. And we allow them to kind of mingle and network and see, who's doing what and where. So those opportunities are great for people to kind of see who else is in their community that's doing tree care, and then they make those connections. And of course, after those events, we then when someone asks us a question, we try to kind of connect them with a local tree care leader in their community. So in that way, many of the former care captains and the mini grantees have definitely come forward and offered to help, teach a workshop for someone who's newer at this.
Sure. Great. So it's great to have that in person aspect, because people can see and learn and just ask right then and there their questions.
Definitely. And I mean, we definitely do kind of email introductions as well, but I think the networking events are kind of where it all begins.
Sure. Great. We have another question coming in. If you have questions, again, just chat them in your questions box, and we will ask them. Um, so we do have a question about what it takes to kind of run the program. So your administrative time and costs. I'm sure that things have smoothed out in the couple years that you've been running the program. So you have some best practices you've already shared, um, which makes your time more efficient. But do you have any idea of kind of the fraction of the grants that you give out, how much time that's costing administratively? So you don't have to give a number, but would you say, it costs about half of the program to run the program, or what would you can answer it however you like.
That's a great question. And I don't have a number in terms of the fraction of the breakdown. I can certainly look into it and get back to the group, but I will say it accounts for a lot of our time, especially. So last year, I was the key person running the program,
Hmm.
and especially kind of with the orientation and the follow up, and a lot of the time is actually spent doing site visits. So I make it a point to go out and visit as many groups as I can at least once, again, just to see on the ground how things are working, especially if they have, when they have their event, to go there and support them, and then just talk to their volunteers and just thank them for their work. So it's a huge piece of my day-to-day work, especially in that kind of May through September or October time. But I can kind of think through like an hourly or percentage breakdown and get back to you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And just so that everyone knows, we will be putting together a resource list after the session, so we'll have more information there as well. We have another question coming in about volunteers. So this is clearly a program that has engaged all kinds of groups of volunteers. Um, do you notice any difference in the volunteer engagement that Million Trees NYC, the program, had previous to this mini grant program and then now?
Huh, that's a really good question. Um, I think for sure, in terms of the continued engagement,
Hmm.
uh, the mini grants program has really helped kind of start that up and then continue that. So what I mean by that is, in the past, we've trained many volunteers. We've offered a lot of introductory workshops, but really, again, the key is we want to keep them coming back and caring for their
Right.
trees in the long term. So I think when you look at that continued engagement, the mini grants program, because it's investing, in not only the $1,000 amount, but more importantly, we train our grantees. We make sure that they're care captains, so they know how to teach and lead programs. We make sure that they attend the community organizing workshop, so that again they can build kind of a more committed and a strong group, and they can access other resources. Even outside of just street tree care. And we just kind of provide them with this ongoing support that they need to get their tree care done. So I definitely think it's made a huge impact in the continued engagement.
Excellent. Excellent. I know that that's a main concern of a lot of community groups, is making sure that their volunteer base is sustainable and
Yep.
is, you know, continually engaged. So that's great. Great news. We have one last question about the permits, those hydrant permits. So often, um, when we encourage volunteers to go out and water their trees. The trees are adjacent to their property, but of course, you have the unique situation in New York City of property being nearly everybody's. So,
Mhm.
so how? What was the thought process behind getting those permits, and did it take a long time? Can you just elaborate on that?
Definitely. Yeah, we're very, very happy to be able to offer that, and more importantly, to have a relationship with the Department of Environmental Protection, because ultimately, DEP is the agency that one would have to apply to get the permit. Of course, individuals can apply directly, but we just, as parks, as an agency, and Million Trees as a program, have worked out a way for DEP to kind of give us a blanket permit, if you will, and then every year we submit, once we have selected our grantees and the groups, we submit to DEP a list of these people, their contact information, and then kind of where their work zones are. And then DEP kind of has this agreement, and they kind of create a permit and give it to us. But of course, we want to be very responsible in how we distribute the permit. So no one can receive a permit unless they fill out, the pre-permit form that we've created that tells us what their watering schedule is going to be, where are they going to be watering, where are their trees located, where is the nearest hydrant. So they definitely have to do their homework. And then we don't offer the hydrant permit unless the grantees attend the training. So we definitely have an instructor that teaches them how to safely open and close the fire hydrants, and who to call in case of an emergency and so on. But
Sure.
every year we have to kind of again approach DEP and kind of renew our permit. So it's not it's not guaranteed, but we definitely are working to kind of sustain that relationship.
Excellent. Well, thank you again so much for talking with us about the program. We will link up with you again for more questions at the end of the presentation, end of the session.
Thank you.
Our next presenter is Valerie Roop with Parks and People Foundation in Baltimore, Maryland. We are excited to have her with us. Let me go ahead
Hello.
and hello, hello. Let me go ahead and pull up your information. Here we go. Valerie Roop is the Assistant Director of Community Greening at Parks and People Foundation. She oversees the greening and park related programs that foster active community participation and stewardship of Baltimore's natural resources. Prior to Parks and People Foundation, Valerie spent years as a Director of Development at the Women's Law Center of Maryland and has done other fundraising work with the Baltimore Museum of Industry. With undergraduate degrees and a certificate in volunteer management from Shippensburg University, Valerie is finishing up her capstone coursework for a graduate degree in public administration and public policy. So we're excited for her and her achievements, and we're thrilled to have her on with us.
Thank you. All right, so let's get started. So thank you everyone for being here. I think I'm having some trouble clicking through. There? Okay, there we go. All right, to get started, I just want to quickly review the agenda. We'll start with a brief overview of the Parks and People Foundation's work, just to provide some context of how our grant programs tie into our mission and strategy. Next, I'll review the Parks and People grant programs, and then we'll briefly touch upon some considerations and tips for creating a community grants program at your organization. The Parks and People Foundation was founded in 1984 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization with a mission to support a wide range of recreational and educational opportunities, create and sustain beautiful and lively parks, and promote a healthy natural environment for Baltimore City. Parks and People works with a wide variety of partners, including government agencies, researchers, nonprofits, grassroots community groups, and even classrooms of school-aged children to bring people together to address overlapping environmental and quality of life issues in the city. Through the years, we've raised and invested over $60 million in programs and projects in Baltimore. Like many older cities in the U.S., Baltimore has changed drastically since 1950, due in part to deindustrialization and depopulation. Between 1950 and 2010, we lost about exactly 34.6% of our population. That left 30,000 vacant lots or abandoned properties in the city. And just to put this in perspective, the U.S. Census Bureau reports that there are 1 in 9 housing units in Baltimore that are vacant. This extensive vacancy is coupled with a very high poverty rate of about 21%. So this leads to food deserts and other environmental injustice issues. And particular to this audience, in 2007, the urban tree canopy was just 27%. So the challenges facing Baltimore require a broad network of support and many, many helping hands to build neighborhoods where people live, build healthy neighborhoods where people can live, work, and play. So how Parks and People goes about addressing this challenge is through its One Park vision. One Park is a concept that was developed to basically link all green spaces in Baltimore so that it connects Baltimore as a city within a park. So our programs all advance this One Park concept by serving residents of all ages, backgrounds, and interests with simple common goal of creating a better and greener city. One Park begins with a single street tree right in front of a row house and then connects the city through landscape streets, medians to major city parks, schoolyards, campuses, revitalized vacant lots, and backyards. Every open space is an opportunity to advance One Park by connecting and creating green spaces and greenways in Baltimore. And similarly, we look at every person and organization is able to contribute to One Park vision. When we develop programs, we always look to see how people can interact with our mission and advance this One Park vision. So we consider what motivates people to care about their neighborhoods, how residents can connect with their shared open spaces, how we can motivate residents to better steward their green spaces. And through this, we have 2 programmatic visions that approach One Park very differently in complementary fashions. The Motivating Youth Division engages with young people in summer camp, sports leagues, and environmental education to really foster a sense of appreciation in youth of the natural environment. And then our Great Parks, Clean Streams, and Green Communities vision really works to improve the quality of neighborhoods through greening activities and by forming networks among communities to sustain natural resources. There's a lot of work to be done, so we never think that people can do it on their own. So we really focus on that partnership aspect. The primary activities through our Great Parks division include community forestry, parks, community greening, green infrastructure, and clean water initiatives. So how do mini grants fit into this picture? The way that we see greening in Baltimore City is that we can't do everything ourselves. We have committed staff and volunteers, but we can't green all of Baltimore. So mini grants are a really important way that we involve community members in our mission. Our grant program is really designed to respond to the needs of communities and help remove barriers to greening. And mini grants are one of the most effective ways that we found to foster and support the community-led efforts and especially as they're working to create well-utilized, vibrant green spaces in Baltimore. And most importantly, we believe that effective greening projects are conceived by the communities that they take place in, so that they can really address the unique needs of a neighborhood that we, as people who understand and know Baltimore, may not identify because we don't live in that community. So our job really is to help support these community members as they work to achieve their goals. So the Community Grants Program, support comes in many ways through it to community groups. We give to community groups. Our grants are designed to really just provide different resources that they might need to get them started and keep them connected to other greeners at any level. Community is really critical aspect of these in their grant application. Just often we see groups who well and people and more just take act. It's really difficult for these people to keep up with projects if they're doing it in a very small group. Also, they sometimes meet resistance in the community. For instance, a community member who adopts a vacant lot and would like to plant some trees in it. They might find that other community members use that space for parking. So that parking may be illegal, but if it's a city-owned lot at least, but without the community buy-in, we've seen people have their trees vandalized or some tensions erupt. So we really want to see that support from the community before any applications come through. The other aspect of the grants program is really the programmatic end. As nonprofit professionals, it's easy to assume that people have an idea of basics of community organizing because we deal with this every day. So we really try to look at these programs as a way to help remove barriers for people and help them navigate them through different processes they may encounter when they're trying to take on a greening project. So, for instance, I've received a lot of phone calls from community members who are looking to install street trees on a block. I'm sure many of you get calls like that as well. And then you start to talk to them and describe the funding and permits and equipment and labor and commitments that they'll need from residents to care for the trees. A lot of times they can become pretty intimidated. And any other venue you're looking at, not just streets, in parks or in vacant green spaces, they're going to have to go through different processes that might not be intuitive to new gardeners or new tree planters. So we really try to help them, use the program to help build their capacity and walk them through the process. So not only do we focus on the community building, but we offer training and technical assistance and a lot of one-on-one support with these groups. And we also try to focus on getting the broader community members connected to one another because, again, with our mission being as big as it is, we can't do everything. This is really to help build those community stewards and help them to be leaders in their communities. So the application, I'm sorry, there it is. I apologize, I lost the arrow for clicking. The application process is designed to walk applicants through the project steps to ensure that they have proper access to property and to the resources they need to develop and maintain a sustainable project. Each community is as different as each project that is proposed. As you can see from the pictures on this slide, we work with groups seeking to green a wide variety of sites. This makes personal-led support very critical for success of projects. We require applicants to attend workshops to learn about project development and grant writing as a first step of applying. Next, we have them submit a basic intent to apply form that tells us just the who, what, where, when, and why, the very basic ideas of the project they're proposing. Staff then read the forms and follow up with a consultation call that directs applicants to different resources that might be available to them and to help them troubleshoot for potential problems. The calls involve everything from connecting groups to other local groups doing similar projects for mentorship. We send them to good resources for inexpensive or free supplies, and even some direction about legal considerations such as how to determine property ownership or to obtain access to abandoned privately owned properties. When possible, we refer applicants to nonprofits or community resources. This helps applicants become more familiar with the local landscape of service providers and helps them to access additional resources. For example, a local nonprofit offers rain barrel and rain garden design workshops, so applicants can access expertise in simple stormwater mitigation projects. And some more established groups may be interested in security of their property through land trust and need legal assistance to do so, so we'll refer them to organizations that specialize in those areas. This helps to really create a stronger and more connected network of greeners in Baltimore while really diversifying leadership in the community. After the consultation call, a site visit occurs. This site visit is really focused mostly on technical assistance. So, we'll be looking at things like sunlight, soil quality, and so on. But it helps to give that information to the applicants, but it also gives the staff members a really good familiarity with the site so that we can convey that information to the grant review committee. So the next step is a simple yet comprehensive application that is submitted by the applicant. The application is then reviewed by a committee. Our review committees consist mostly of experienced grantees, some local government representatives, a few of our staff and partners, and some volunteers of other nonprofit organizations that have missions similar to Parks and People. Successful applicants must sign a grant agreement after they receive an award, and most of the grants last for a year. We do conduct mid-year check-ins with each grantee, but honestly, we rarely actually have to because we communicate with our grantees very often. Through the grant programs, we have the opportunity to really refer those groups to other programs Parks and People offers, so they can get additional education and material resources. So this really helps us to continue to interact with them on an ongoing basis. And at the conclusion of a grant period, grantees are required to submit a report that includes outcomes, receipts, and pictures. So not only is that information that we keep so we can see what's actually happening, but it helps them to really build a track record in case they'd like to seek funding from other sources in the future. So some of the programs that we offer at Parks and People have been around for quite some time. These programs are offered twice a year, and they're offered, just to give you an idea of the timeline, we offer spring and fall grant rounds. And to give the workshops for a spring workshop would be held in November or December of the previous year, with the applications being due at the very end of January, and then the grant period will begin in March or April of the year. We provide 90% of funds up front, and we hold the last 10% until after the grant report is submitted, because this really helps us to get our grant reports turned in a timely manner. And for that reason, we don't allow applicants to have two open grants at the same time through the same grant fund. And we do not require grantees to be nonprofits, but we either require them to have a bank account or a fiscal sponsor. So our core grant programs all include funding for forestry or other greening projects. So they aren't limited just to forestry, but they're actually a really popular grant that we give out are for street tree plantings or open space plantings. Our neighborhood greening grants program offers grants of up to $1,000. That's been offered since 1996, and since that time we've awarded a little over $700,000 to 475 community groups. Other projects that take place with this are edible gardens, streetscaping, schoolyard greening, pocket parks, sign bed plantings, cleanups, and so on. A few years ago, we added an option to tack on a little clean water mini grant with the neighborhood greening grants. These grants are up to $250. You submit them at the same time as the neighborhood greening grants, but it's a way that we use to try to get people who are already active greeners to start thinking about ways they can use those sites to improve water quality. So we have funded a lot of native trees through that program, and some rain barrels, native plants, trash cans, and so on. And then finally, our other longstanding program is offered in partnership with the Department of Recreation and Parks here in Baltimore. These grants go up to $5,000 through our Partnership for Parks program. Partnership for Parks is focused on motivating residents to become involved volunteers in parks and projects led by Parks and People. So as people become more invested in the parks, the grants and capacity building resources are there to help them to formalize as a friends group or as a community stewardship group for that park to take on ongoing maintenance and improvement projects. And from time to time, we do take advantage of opportunities as they arise. When you have a structure for a grants program in place, sometimes they do almost fall in your lap, especially when you work with a lot of partners. For instance, about a year ago, we had one of our partners had received a donation of $500 gift cards from the Home Depot. So they gave them to us to run through a competitive grant program for communities. So these brand new city-owned vacant lot projects, revitalization projects, were able to apply for these and get a gift card. And it just was a very basic process that we had modeled after our other existing grant programs. So all of the infrastructure was in place already. Another example we had was called Love Your Block with Trees, where we received a grant for what we call makeover packages for vacant lots. So basically, brand new lots that were very recently adopted. Just had some new groups that really just getting started in the greening process. We would give 10 native trees to them and give them hundreds of dollars worth of native plants, soils, and other gardening materials, and provide on-site training on tree planting and maintenance, and we help them construct rain barrels to keep up with the plant, to keep the plants and trees watered afterwards. We also have a garden irrigation fund right now, and this emerged to address a need to provide convenient water access in green spaces. Not all of the sites in Baltimore have convenient access any longer because greeners are no longer allowed to use the fire hydrants. So some of them have access and some of them have lost it, so this helps to install it right on site. So we will give them up to $3,000 in services, and we'll manage the projects so they can get a little complicated, and the community groups are then encouraged to raise them additional money if there is a need there to install permanent water access on the site. So if you're listening to this webinar, it's safe to assume that a mini grants program for planting trees would promote your mission, but you'll need to consider a few different things when trying to determine if it'll be more effective for you to offer grants or to simply just secure the funds to do the work of community volunteers. One consideration I would suggest is, can you use the grant program to train and educate community members on best practices? Grant programs require a good deal of staff time and administrative support. In addition to the funds that are required for granting, they require promotion, transparency, and grant making is very important as well. And you'll probably need to seek some professional counsel to establish the fund. So you want to determine if the other organizations in your area with similar missions are providing mini grants for projects. If so, it could be worthwhile to explore the option of collaborating with them to save some time and resources. You'll need to clearly define your purpose for a grants program to establish clear criteria for applicants and to seek funds for your regranting fund. For instance, if you want to support community-led projects, would you consider applications from nonprofits with budgets over $1 million? Or if you allow project funds to pay for stipends for gas, reimbursements for volunteers. In different grant programs do occasionally allow these because they are taking on the kind of projects within their scope, but it'll be really helpful to you to determine pretty clearly what it is you are seeking to offer at that time when you're getting started. So most grassroots groups are not nonprofits. So one of the things that we do is we try to make it as simple as possible for people to access these funds. In terms of as long as they have an organized project. But again, we don't require them to have a nonprofit status. When they can have a simple bank account in the group's name and receive a check cut to them without a fiscal sponsor. You'll also need to understand how to structure your program to limit risk and liability. As far as awarding grants, sometimes people will award funding for contract services and street tree pit installation, or they'll will or will not provide money for gas power tools. That's something you'll truly have to explore beforehand as well. And also, of course, making the grantees or sign an agreement to just clearly remove you from any liability with project implementation. Some nonprofit groups have dedicated funds for raising grants, but many organizations like Parks and People have to fundraise to obtain these granting funds. So, I will say honestly, they're not the easiest funds to secure, but they can be very, very effective. So if you're looking to secure funds from another organization to help give you some funding for your regranting fund, you really need to demonstrate how providing your organization's money in mini grants will be able to leverage greater returns than you would be able to result from simply making having that other organization that's funding you just make the grant to that other group that might be applying to your mini grants fund. So again, this ties back to how we look at this as a capacity building tool and offer training and technical assistance and so on through the programs. And several of the grant programs are funded through partnerships. The partners provide regranting funds, and we raise the funds for staff support and administration. Just remember that, like with any other type of programmatic funding, if you're relying on one funder for support, the program could be at risk if the funder opts to stop funding it. So diversification is ideal. And just a few tips when you're offering these programs. You'll never know who you're going to encounter when you're offering mini grants. You'll find yourself working with some people who are very highly skilled and more knowledgeable than you on their subject matters. And then the next person you work with may be an absolute novice. Some people will have very limited education, while others will have PhDs. You know, so what we do to address this is we define basic requirements and make all applicants meet them regardless of past experiences. I get calls all the time asking, do I have to do this? I've gotten a grant in the past. And the answer in that case is yes, you do, just to promote fairness. And we do try to encourage people, if they've gone to a workshop before or something along those lines, to send someone else in their community group to really help, just to reiterate to them that they're going to need to develop more leaders within their group. And that's a way to help do so, is to get more people involved in the training and planning of these projects. And always remember that your applicants are volunteers. Many of the applicants might be first-time grant writers as well. So the tasks applicants are seeking to undertake may begin to seem a little daunting when they're planning their project. So I always try to make sure that I recall the first time I try to plan a project. It can get really frustrating for people, so look for the barriers that your grantees may encounter and seek to address those. For instance, here, we've had some people who don't have access to a computer, so we offer computer access in a quiet space for people to write their applications if necessary. And a lot of times we conduct our site visits before or after work hours to be able to accommodate some of the applicant schedules. And then, the way that we look at the mini grant program is an opportunity to train and engage. I make sure that we never decline an applicant without offering some type of resources or next steps so they can better position the applicant for success in the future. Most steps are most times there's just a little additional guidance where the applicant can reapply and receive an award in the future. We also encourage the review committee to identify opportunities to fund maybe a small portion of a project to get a group started so that they can maintain momentum and continue to move forward, even if the whole project isn't a good idea at the time. So, for instance, we might fund, one raised bed in a community garden instead of 20 raised beds because they only have a few gardeners, but that'll help them to get going. And finally, always be willing to evolve with the communities you serve. The mini grant programs will allow you to really have your ear on the ground. So capture that information and use that to help you develop your grant program and other programs within your organization that can address community needs. And I'm sorry, I'm having trouble clicking through. There we go. Last slide was just a few resources that you can access, some templates and things for beginning your grant program. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. What a great way to round out the session with an established mini grant program that covers more than just trees. Again, please type your questions in the questions bar, the questions tab. And just to start us off, a quick question about working with other departments and working with the city of Baltimore. Do you have kind of clear distinctions on the work that the city departments do as opposed to the volunteers that you train, what they will do? Because it looks like, since it's more than just tree work that these volunteers are partaking in, sounds like we always all have the overzealous volunteer who wants to do everything, and we want to make sure that there's maybe clear distinctions. I'm not sure if you have an agreement with different departments. What is your relationship with the city?
Well, we have relationships with various city agencies, and most of our grant programs have some affiliation with different offices. So,
Okay.
for instance, our Partnership for Parks program is operated in partnership with Rec and Parks here in Baltimore. So, in order for a grantee to do a project through that, beginning with the intent to apply, even the workshops we hold in partnerships, that we'll have some staff from Rec and Parks there and some staff from Parks and People. And during the planning, during the grant workshop, we'll break out into little mini groups and have them, kind of talk about projects and so on, so that the conversation starts there. And again, a lot of times these groups, through that program, we've been working with them for a while because they started as volunteers who started, gaining some momentum for projects in their area. So they're then referred to this grant program to start getting some funding to build their capacity. So then, during the site visit process, there's a very open line communication where, we might lead the site visit, or a Rec and Park staff member might lead the site visit, so that they can really start connecting, the ideas the community members have to what can happen in the parks. Because sometimes, it's just the grant fund doesn't fund something they might have in mind. Or even more importantly, a lot of times there are some capital projects in the works that are a few years down the line, but it doesn't make sense to plant a tree grove in an area that's going to be uprooted in a few years for a capital improvement that's in the master plan. So the Rec and Park staff will know that, whereas the community member
Right.
would not. So it really does take an open dialogue between the city agencies and the community groups. So we really try to help to facilitate that through this grant program, so that they can start help them to work together, instead of having groups go off in a different direction and find out that what they're trying to do won't be supported by the city.
Right. That's great. It sounds like it's a very complementary program as opposed to everyone working in a silo. It's everyone working together. Excellent. We have another question about um, irrigation. So, contrast to the New York mini grant program, there isn't always fire hydrant access.
Mhm.
So, can you talk a little bit about your the permanent irrigation systems and kind of how you support the community groups for watering and maintaining those trees?
Okay. So, in as far as, the garden irrigation fund, for the most part, it's, we did a pilot phase last year. So we're doing the second round this year, and then we're going to keep working to keep it going in the future. And we're doing that in partnership with the Office of Sustainability here in Baltimore. So that program has, for the most part, really been focused on open green spaces. So, there's definitely some trees planted in there, but they really, for the most part, because of the cost of them, a lot of the street tree stewards wouldn't find it to be, the easiest to fund. Also with those, because of the limited funding available, we have required sites to have been in existence 3 years, just so that we know that they're sustainable, or at least have an indication that they're sustainable.
Sure.
So that because with city investment going into it, it's hard to justify unless there's some track record. So as far as street trees are concerned, for that we've actually gone different routes. In Baltimore City, there is an opportunity. I don't know that there are in other cities, that when a property has been demolished, there's at times a meter pit still there. So you can access that water by paying the city $120 for the year, and then you can just hook a hose right into it. The only thing is sometimes they're not active. They're not connected to a main line, which is where this Garden Irrigation Fund program comes into play.
Okay.
Other times, it's just the having each person who's, at a house next to the street tree, just having them sign up. We usually actually ask community members to have the people who will be on their block tending the trees go around door to door and have them sign a form. It's not anything legally binding, but when you actually have someone sign something, they feel a little more committed to keeping up with it. But having on a block by block basis, just individual tree stewards being responsible for the watering the tree in front of their home. That's been something that's been really effective in different neighborhoods in Baltimore. And also then, in each block having someone who's kind of almost like a tree captain who will, nudge the neighbor if they have them keep it up on the tree, and orchestrate mulching twice a year and things like that. So we funded a lot of projects like that.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, we want to go ahead and thank everyone. Thank you, Valerie. Thank you, Shalini, for joining us this afternoon for the ACTrees webcast session. Attendees, please take a minute to answer the survey questions that appear at the close of the session. We really value your feedback. Come back and join us next month for our next webcast session, which is going to be on wacky and creative, fun tree tools. So we're excited about that session. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the ACTrees webcast series, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much.